Welcome to Lesson 8 by Chess Achieves. In this lesson we're going to learn two important tournament terms called stalemate and draw. You should already understand the three ways to get out of check from Lesson 4. Three ways are capture, interpose, and move. Those are the only three ways you can get out of check. But what happens if you're not in check and cannot move any pieces? This is called stalemate. And as surprising as this may seem, the outcome of this result is a tie in a tournament. Both players would receive half a point. So, a player with overwhelming odds of winning has to make sure that his opponent is either in check, checkmate, or has a piece to move before moving their own pieces. In the example shown here, if it's the white army's turn, the white army has no legal moves. The king suppresses it from the D2 square, and the queen suppresses it from the D1, E2, F2, and F1 squares. So all the squares surrounding the king would be illegal moves for the white army. The white army has, in this example, no other pieces that it can possibly move, and he's not in check. This is an example of stalemate. And in a tournament, it would have resulted in a half point for both players. Next, we'll cover the term draw. Draws can happen several ways in chess. We can agree to a draw with our opponent. There's draw by insufficient material for checkmate, draw by threefold repetition of moves, and draw by the 50-move rule. When it's your turn, you can simply offer your opponent a draw. If they agree, then the game is drawn, and in a tournament, the result is a tie with half a point being awarded to each player. In the example shown here, this is an example of a draw by insufficient material. Neither player has enough material to create checkmate on their opponent, so there's no point in continuing play. This result, too, would be half a point for each player. We'll continue by showing a few more examples of draw by insufficient material that are well known. A king and a knight versus a king is draw by insufficient material, as you can never arrange the pieces in any configuration that would create checkmate. You can try it for yourself if you have some extra time. King and bishop versus king is also a known draw. There's no way to create checkmate with this combination of pieces. It is possible to create checkmate with two knights and a king versus a king. However, by USCF rules, USCF means the United States Chess Federation, this is a technical draw. The ability to create checkmate is quite difficult, and your opponent has to make a mistake. So in this case, if you have two knights and a king versus a king, either player could ask for a draw and it would be awarded based on this technicality. Turns out a king, a knight, and a bishop do have the ability to win. So this is winnable, but it's a very challenging win. Bishops, as long as they're on opposite colored squares, can easily win a chess game by creating a wall and pushing your opponent into a corner. Having a king and a rook versus a king is one of the most common endgame formats you'll see. This is a winnable outcome for the army that has the king and the rook versus a king. A king and a pawn versus a king is winnable, but only if you can promote the pawn to a rook or queen. If you promote to a knight or a bishop, this game would be a draw. Next, we'll discuss draw by threefold repetition. In this example, it's the black army's turn as they're in check. They move straight down. The rook comes and checks them again. The black king moves up. The rook moves up. Black king comes down, the rook moves down, black king comes up, the rook comes up, black king comes down again. And it's a draw by repetition. The same position existed 3 times. It was like taking a snapshot photo, and each time the photo looked the same. Draw by threefold repetition is part of tournament chess, and if you don't want to fall into it, you have to make sure that you don't create the same position 3 times on the board. One additional point about threefold repetition is that it doesn't have to be 3 times in a row. If the same position exists at any point during the game for the 3rd consecutive time, that too would be threefold repetition. Again, they don't have to be consecutive. It could be on move 50, move 60, and move 70 of the game. If the position is the same 3 times in a row, the board setup is the same, it's draw by threefold repetition. The final type of draw that can occur is draw by the 50 move rule. It's 50 moves from the last pawn moved or the last piece captured. In this example, there are no pawns to move. There are no more pieces to capture. The white army has 50 moves or less in order to checkmate the black army. If the black army is counting and counts to 50, and it's 50 of black's moves only, you don't count both the white and the black army's moves, 50 moves of the black king from this point would be a draw. White can easily checkmate in well under 50 moves if they know the technique of checkmating with a king and a rook versus a king. So as a recap from today's lessons, draw and stalemate both have the same result in a tournament, half a point for each player. Stalemate is a situation when one army has no legal moves and is not in check. Draw comes about multiple ways. We can agree to a draw by insufficient material, meaning neither player has enough material to checkmate the other, draw by threefold repetition where the same position exists 3 points at any time during the game, or draw by the 50 move rule where it's 50 moves from the last pawn moved or the last piece captured. These are tournament rules, and you want to utilize them to the best of your ability. If you're in a game where you're losing, you want to look for a way to be in stalemate or to find a draw by one of the choices. If you're winning a game, you want to avoid stalemate by making sure your opponent has somewhere to legally move when it's their turn if they're not being placed into check or checkmate. Additionally, you also want to watch out for the other ways a draw can be created by either draw by repetition or draw by the 50 move rule. We hope this has clarified some things for those of you that want to become tournament players, and hopefully you can utilize those both to your advantage.